right, this is Chapter 6, Lesson 2, Multiplication and Division Equations. So, the expression 3x means 3 times the value of x. So, we've talked about invisible math a little bit throughout the school year. So basically the idea behind this is the 3 and the x right next to each other don't mean that you just put that number down. So for example, if I have 3x and x equals 1, that doesn't mean this is 31. Okay? This means this is 3 times 1. There's an invisible multiplication symbol in there. So the numerical factor of a multiplication expression like 3x is called a blank. So 3 is the coefficient of x. So in that blank, you're going to write coefficient. So the numerical factor of a multiplication expression like 3x is called a coefficient. So the numerical factor, that means the number. So 3 is the coefficient of 3x. All right, so last time we talked about the addition and subtraction properties of equality. So today we're going to talk about the division and multiplication properties of equality. So basically the idea behind these is, again, it's the opposite. So if you're using the addition property of equality, you're adding. If you're using the subtraction property of equality, you're subtracting. Okay? So but you're going to use the opposite of what you actually might need. So if you're adding something and you want to get rid of it, you're going to use the subtraction property of equality to get rid of that number. Okay? So division property of equality, the blank, 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 blank states that the two sides of an equation remain equal when you divide each side by the same non-zero number. Very important that it is non-zero. Okay, you cannot divide something by 0. Bad things happen to the universe when you do. Okay, so in these blanks you're going to write division property of equality. So the division property of equality states that the two sides of an equation remain equal when you divide each side by the same non-zero number. Okay, very similarly, we have the multiplication property of equality. The blank, 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 blank states that the two sides of an equation remain equal if you multiply each side by the same number. In those blanks, you're going to put multiplication property of equality. So the multiplication property of equality states that the two sides of an equation remain equal if you multiply each side by the same number. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of examples. My first example says solve 20 equals 4x. Check your solution. So I need to use the division property of equality because right now I'm multiplying two things together. So I need to do the opposite in order to get x by itself. So 4 divided by 4x. And 20 divided by 4, so I divide 4 by both sides. 20 divided by 4 gives me 5. 4x divided by 4 gives me x, okay? Remember, 4 divided by 4 is 1, so you can write just x. X has a coefficient of 1 unless it states otherwise. Then you can double check by replacing or substituting in 5 for x. So 4 times 5 does equal 20, so it is correct. So the solution is 5, okay? Second one I have says Leah sent 574 text messages last week. On average, how many messages did she send each day? So there are 7 days in a week, so that's the number I'm going to divide by. 574 equals 7m. That's the messages. M represents messages. So I divide by 7. 574 divided by 7 is 82. So Leila sent 82 messages on average each day. Again, you can double check whatever you get for your variable, substitute it back in, multiply it through, and see if it works. The next one I have says solve a divided by -4 equals -9. So here I'm dividing my variable, which means I need to multiply in order to get the variable by itself. Again, opposite. Okay, so remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. My dear MD, those are together, multiplication and division. They're opposite inverses of each other. Same thing with addition, subtraction. Okay, so I'm multiplying by -4. So x I multiply by -4 each time, so when I do that, it cancels. I'm left with A. -9 times -4 equals positive 36. Again, I can double check, substituting it back in. 36 divided by -4 does get me -9. The distance D Tina travels in her car while driving 60 miles per hour for 3 hours is given by the equation D divided by 3 equals 60. How far did she travel? So again, I'm using division, so I need to use the opposite of multiplication. I need to multiply both sides by 3. D divided by 3 times 3 just gives me D, and 60 times 3 is 180. Again, you can double check, substituting it back in for D and solve it. Okay, so Tina traveled 180 miles. All right, there are a couple of try problems out below. I want you to go ahead, pause the video, try them out, and when you're done, we'll go over the answers together. Now that you've had a chance to try out the try problems, let's go over the answers together. So the first one I have says Mrs. Acosta's car can travel an average of 24 miles on each gallon of gasoline. Write and solve an equation to find how many gallons of gasoline she will need for a trip of 348 miles. So 348 is what my trip is going to be equal to. Okay? It tells me in the problem she travels an average of 24 miles for every gallon, okay, of gasoline. So 24G, where G is going to represent my gallons of gasoline. Okay? So from here, since I'm multiplying 24 times G, I'm going to divide both sides by 24, which will give me 14.5. Okay. So she'll need about 14.5 gallons for the trip. So if I substitute this back in, remember 1 gallon is 24 miles, right? It's an average. So 14.5 times 24 does give me 348. My next problem says solve the equation 30 equals 6x, then check your solution. So I have 30 equals 6x. This is 6 times x, so I have multiplication. I need to use division because that's the inverse operation. 30 divided by 6 equals 5, so x equals 5. I can substitute that back in. 6 times 5, and I want to know if it equals 30. 6 times 5 does equal 30. So that is good to go. Next one I have to solve the equation y divided by -3 equals -8. So since I'm dividing here, I need to use the opposite operation, which is multiplication. So y, I need to multiply by -3. So this cancels each other out, and I'm left with y. -8 times -3 gives me a positive 24. Again, I can check my solution. 24 divided by -3. I want to double check if this equals -8. 24 divided by -3 does give me -8. So I've checked my solution. Guys, don't just put this in and say, yep, I'm good. Actually double check it. Make sure it's correct. Okay? And that is the end of Chapter 6, Lesson 2.